Welcome back to Pokemon Moon. Maybe we'll finally actually be getting to one of the main core gameplay changes of actual Pokemon in this generation, because we don't have gyms anymore.
Okay, this is just precious. This preschooler dropped into a battle stance the moment she saw you. Like she's been training
No,
for
more
all her
like you
life.
snuck up behind her and she's terrified out of her fucking wits.
No, she dropped into a crouched ready position like she's been
No,
training.
you have to spread your arms, make yourself look big.
Like she's been
That will scare them
training
off.
for this all her life, and her life is about 3 times longer than it looks like it was. She's a soldier. I love the preschoolers in this game, man. They're great.
One of the most interesting things I find about the Alola region, or just in this game's plot in general, is that this island is just up and coming in terms of the Elite Four and how the Pokemon League works.
Yeah.
So they don't have standard gyms. They don't
Yeah.
have anything that we've known from previous generations. And I think it's very interesting to see how a new region implements that new rule set. What did you guys think about that?
You see, I like this system because, again, to go back to Pokemon Coliseum, and I'm talking specifically about the first Coliseum, a lot of people tell me, oh, XD is way better. I've never played XD, so I can only speak to the first one. There is no gym system in that game. You just kind of go from a straight point-to-point plot kind of thing, as opposed to, and, you know, like, I mean, that works for other RPGs, but in Pokemon, these gym battles really are kind of milestones for, like, you know, it's just like, oh man, I beat the 4th gym, and there's that sort
So
of...
I'm roughly halfway there.
Yeah, there's that sense of, not just that, but there's that sense of progression that you don't really feel in that game. It's just like, okay, we're going through another dark and dingy town, and it's
to expand on that, it's kind of, it enhances the sense of adventure that Pokemon has, because although Pokemon is a simple game and, you know, structured in a very linear way, it maintains a sense of adventure by not making it feel like you're going from A to B so much as goal to goal.
yeah.
Objective to objective, you know?
Yeah, so what I actually would like them to do, if and when they bring gyms back, is to expand on something that happened in Gold and Silver, where in Gold and Silver, after you beat Morty, I believe you can do the next 3 gyms in any order you want. Like, the game kind of expects you to do Chuck, then, oh god, what's the steel name? Oh god, I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Yeah, fighting. The game expects you to do fighting, then steel, then ice, but you can do ice first if you want to. So I would like for in the next game for them to like, okay, after gym 1, you can do the gyms in whatever order you want, and then this is actually brought up in the Pokemon Generations
Pokemon The Origin
anime, but like Brock puts out
for
specific Pokemon for however many gym badges you have. So
for
just
half
like
a
if you
second, I just thought that we were playing a Zelda game. Just the camera angle in the background and the way everything looks like a dungeon, it just tricked my brain.
Yeah, but non-linear gym progression I think would be cool. Like you can do the fire gym 1st or 7th, you know, and they'll just adjust the level of the Pokemon there depending on how many gym badges you get. I think that would be neat.
Like a Link Between Worlds, in a sense.
Sorta, yeah. Only with Pokemon.
Yeah.
Pokemon.
Speaking of Zelda.
Yeah. But, so one thing I do like about the trials in this game is, though, that they're all different, you know? Because, like, you know, the individual puzzles in each gym are all kind of different. Like, okay, we're investigating trash cans in this one. There's teleporters in that one, but it's all the same kind of stuff. You know, puzzles, trainer battles, gym battle. In this, it always ends with a totem fight, but the stuff you're doing in each trial is all different, which makes them feel much more unique, and there's more mystery for every single trial that you go to. I mean, like, this one's kind of lame, but it's the first one, so whatever. Like, you're just fighting Rattata. That's not super interesting, but still, you know, like, super basic early games, so I can forgive that to some extent.
Got a berry.
Ooh. So why isn't that mossy rock a mossy enough rock to evolve your Eevee? Why do you need the specific lush jungle mossy
Why
rock?
can't I just use a leaf stone?
No, you can't use an ice stone. You need to use an icy rock, which is different. Ryan, jeez.
Why?
This is an ice cube.
What's so? Do you know what a mossy rock is? A leaf stone.
Also, if you want an Eevee to be an Espeon, it can't be affectionate towards you. It needs to be
happy, though.
It needs to be happy towards you, which are two different things.
That's kind of... To be honest, like I was a major Pokemon fan when I was a kid, like everyone my age was, but like after Gen 2, things started to get really complicated in a backdoor sense. Where...
Well, because they didn't want to they just never seemed to get over the fact that we'll accept new evolutions with stones or just level up. Just because it's later on, they have to somehow explain why you couldn't do it earlier.
To be fair, though, they've come up...
I'm talking about stuff like, oh, look at your EVs or IVs or your...
Oh, well, you never...
All
okay,
that stuff that you can't even know about unless you go on a wiki and read a guide.
Okay, well, needing to have a guide to catch all the Pokemon has always been a thing. But the thing is that you don't need to know EVs or IVs or even natures to beat the game. That's all end game stuff. And one thing I will actually credit Sun and Moon for is that they make all that stuff visible now. You can check in post game. You can check what the IVs of your Pokemon are. You can check what the EVs of them are. Yeah, so you can see that now. Thank Christ.
It's just like there's like you have this really simple basic RPG structure going on, and then you're going to convolute it by implementing all of these arcane stat wizardry things that you need to do to be competitive with it, so that beating the game is a simple exercise in, basic gameplay. But then you've beaten the game and realize that you haven't done any of the things that you need to play against your friends who know all this arcane wizardry that you haven't been doing.
Yeah, Pokemon games have always been known to. There is your story team, and then there's your meta team.
Yeah, because your story team is going to be awful. Your story team's going to be awful because...
So you get to the end of the game and realize that you've done absolutely nothing out of all the things that you need to do to be competitive, even against your friend online. So you need to spend an additional however many hours putting together a team that can do that.
Okay, so just because it's something to do when I'm watching TV or whatever, I do breed Pokemon with maximized IV stats. I'm not saying that these are competitive Pokemon, because I'm doing this with Pokemon like Butterfree, for instance, who are just not competitively viable. But
Shut your mouth. Don't listen to them.
Yeah, but just for the sense of scale, sometimes because your IVs you can manipulate it, but you can manipulate it through breeding, but there's still a randomness element. Sometimes it can take upwards of 60 eggs to get the Pokemon with the stats necessary for it to be competitive. Yeah. And so that can take like 2+ hours, and that's not counting things like egg move chains, where you have to breed this Pokemon with this Pokemon with this Pokemon so that you can get your Pokemon to have Swords Dance or something like that.
Now we're getting into Chocobo breeding.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, because
God.
That's the very tiring thing about like meta training and all that.
That's why I never do it.
Because you're grinding your Pokemon twofold in a sense. There's the basic experience, and then there's EVs. Because to get EVs in Pokemon games, you have to
battle certain
continuously defeat certain Pokemon that increase EVs of a certain attribute.
Yeah. Or if you do what I do and you just leave them in the Pokepelp Go overnight, which is just faster.
Well, previous generations.
I don't know how people did this in Gen 2 and 3. I have no idea how. Like,
they ran in circles for 6
hours.
Like,
honestly, most of the people I know who in, like, Gen 3 and 4, and, like, honestly, before Gen 6, everybody I knew who did competitive Pokemon always did it through online battling programs, which allow you to just do it through a menu and see, okay, you want a Charizard
you just create the Pokemon you want.
You want Charizard with max special attack EVs? There you go. He has max IVs? There you go. It's just easier, Like, Sun and Moon... The only reason why I have them on cartridge now in Sun and Moon is because Sun and Moon actually makes it possible to check what your IVs are now. I mean, you have to wait until the end of the game, but I don't mind that because, that's not something that matters.
You're not playing for IVs or EVs in story anyway.
Yeah, and it's impossible to because you have to defeat Pokemon with the EVs that you don't want to get just to beat the game, so it's...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, I call it arcane wizardry for a reason. It's not upfront, and it's kind of just... It kind of feels like the Pokemon series has been using these special archaic stat things to substitute for the lack of strategic flexibility that the game has. It's kind of why I said, I'd kind of like to see more moves per individual Pokemon. The concern was raised in that previous part that it would undermine the team-based battle, but that really only depends on what kind of skills you're allowed to use.
Well, May I ask, compared to what specifically, and at what point do you just have to accept that Pokemon is doing its own thing?
Yeah, because trying to structure Pokemon like a traditional RPG is
I know.
weird.
It's like, I never really felt, for instance, that Shin Megami Tensei having 8 moves per demon necessarily undermines the importance of having a varied team of demons. So I don't really think having one Pokemon out with 6 moves would necessarily damage that element of the gameplay too much.
You see, I think the thing is the pacing of Pokemon battles is very different than the pacing of most other RPGs.
Yeah,
because in Pokemon, you're almost always one-hit KOing the other Pokemon. Like, that's just how you win fights. So having too many moves would, like, possibly overcomplicate things for the casual player.
Possibly, but at the same time, having those extra 2 slots or 4 slots would make moves like Growl less of a hindrance. You
Waste
don't
of
want
time.
Growl. You don't want those moves because you don't have the space for them. They're very basic buffs and debuffs, and you want to have, your 3 or 4 really good moves. You don't have 2 extra spaces to have your 2 or your 1 or 2 decent but not mind-blowing moves,
Yeah, you don't have to, honestly, like, in Pokemon, it can be helpful to use, like, stuff like Swords Dance, which ups your attack by 2 instead of by 1, which is like Howl, I think, ups it by 1. But, you're not going to be using anything like Growl or Tail Whip or anything like that. Really, when I was a kid, I didn't use stat-changing moves at all. I only used status. So, Paralyze and Sleep, usually, because Will-O-Wisp is still the only move that can just
Sand attack everywhere.
Sand attack and Double Team are, the only ones that I would use, because those are the cheap ones that just allowed them to miss all the time, is the thing.
Yeah,
also, we completely ignored that totem fight, but whatever.
that was the boss, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oops.
So the one interesting thing about the totems, though, is that they do have a stat boost at the beginning of the fight.
They start with stat boosts and they summon allies, so you're on basically getting ganged up on.
Oh yeah, the SOS fights.
Which doesn't matter that much later on because you're trying to one-shot the totem Pokemon anyway, except for Mimikyu, which I'm sure everyone screwed up.
Oh yeah,
the first time.
Z move. Oh, disguise is broken.
Fuck.
Yeah. I think SOS Pokemon start appearing in the wilds now, if I remember.
Yes, they do.
Okay, so SOS Pokemon, this is an interesting change, which I like more in concept than in practice, and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon basically fix my only problem with them. So basically, now wild Pokemon, when they're at low health, will start calling for help, and then now suddenly you're in a 1v2 fight. I don't know why you can't just throw out a second one of your own Pokemon now, but whatever. So the interesting thing about this is that you can keep on, if you knock out that extra Pokemon, they can call another one, and this is called SOS chaining. And if you SOS chain for long enough, and get 40 or even more, you can get Pokemon with different abilities, higher stats, and even higher
evolved forms.
Evolved forms, and even higher chances for shinies and things like that, which is neat and stuff. But the problem is that in Vanilla Sun and Moon, there's no way to stop them from SOS chaining. So if you just want to catch the Pokemon and it keeps on calling for help,
or you just want to get some experience,
yeah, then they're just going to keep on calling for help, and it's really, really obnoxious.
Hey, Growlithe.
Yeah, nope, Kukui's going to knock that fucker out.
Kill it. Yep.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
We're having a dogfight. That's a little on the nose. It's a little on the nose, guys. I mean, the only thing that would be even more darkly ironic is if these were both roosters.
Is there
or cats?
There's only one rooster Pokemon I can think of. That's Scraggy and Scrafty. I think are the only rooster designed Pokemon.
My point.
It's unleashing its Z move.
My point
Tail Whip.
is, one of the controversies early on with Pokemon, when parents were making a big production out of every slightly controversial game that came out, was that, these things encourage dog fighting. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point of X and Y, not X and Y, Black and White.
Yeah, Black and White sort of took that idea and turned it into an interesting story, but this was parents, soccer moms, and the like who were unironically claiming these things about the games.
Well, they didn't like it because it had the word evolution in it, and you know how Christians are with,
you see,
not normal Christians, but like the hardcore
that,
soccer mom Christians.
The funny thing about that is that's just clearly an example of them not knowing what the game's about, because the process of evolution is just basic, like, oh, I grow up. It's not like, I mean, granted, I suppose you could guess that Pokemon does support the idea of the theory of evolution, Darwin style, with breeding chains and whatnot, but that's a different story.
Yeah, a lot of adults at the time didn't know what Pokemon was about. My dad thought that Pikachu was the one who eats everything. His words.
Couldn't you also just interpret it as just a Pokemon growing up?
The good old days when the enemy of the video gamer was the conservative and not the liberal.